This lesson we're going to be creating a simple to-do list. So we can go into the input field, add items into the list. We can also select those items and remove them from the list. That's all coming up in this lesson. Go ahead and add in the basic HTML. We're going to need an input area. We're also going to need a button and then a place to list out, so an unordered list in order to list the to-do items. Go into the attached JavaScript. So I've got a file called app.js. And that's where we're going to be doing the JavaScript. So first of all, let's select the elements on the page, and I'm going to use the get element. So using the document object, we're going to get element by ID. The first element that we're selecting is the add to do button, and that's going to allow us to select the button. And then we also want to get the input. So let's set up and grab the input object, and we can use consts because these are going to be objects. Grabbing, and this is just going to be input, or we'll call it input value. So document and do the get element by ID. Select the element that is to do input. So that will select that one into the object. We also want to get the other element, which is the unordered list. And this is where we're going to be outputting the to-do list items. So document and get element by ID. And this is where we're selecting the to-do list. So that selects all three of the page elements that we want to use. Just make sure that the IDs are spelled correctly, and you're ready to move on to the next part where we're going to make things happen. So we want to have the button and add an event listener to the button. So whenever the button gets clicked, we're going to run an anonymous function. And so what that function is going to do is it's going to take the action. So first of all, it's going to get the item input. So item input, and this is going to be whatever that text input is within the input value. And input value, so get it from the field, and we get the value. We also want to then select and create a brand new element. So we're creating a list item, and using the document create element method this allows us to create an element on the fly, and this is going to be a list item. So the text content of the list item is going to be equal to the item text, or the item input, and we can shorten this by selecting it and just equaling it to the input value that we have for the input field. So we've got the list item. We want to add an event listener to the list item, and this will be if we want to remove this particular list item. So add event listener, and if this list item gets clicked, it'll run a function. And what this function is going to do is it's going to remove the item. So using this and selecting the parent node, we remove child from the parent node, and that's going to be the one that matches the current element that we want to remove. And then we want to add the item to the unordered list. So we can select the unordered list, and we can just append the child, which is going to be the list item, to the unordered list. So let's try it out and do test. So there's our first item. When we click it, we can remove it from the list and do a bunch of tests there. And we can select it and we can click it, removing it from the list. We might also want to take the input value and set it just to be blank, so that we have to always ask that the user inputs something in there. And then we can also check to see, adding in a condition to check to see if the input value is blank, or we can say if it's not equal to blank, then we can run this condition. So let's see what happens. So right now it's blank. Let's add in some content there, and it's adding the items into the list, and we can select those items and remove them from the list. So that's how we can create a simple to-do list.